Okay, welcome to the second section of Derek and Joe's presentation here. My section looks at some of what we found out using some graphing and analysis of our data, running it through Excel. It was really exciting, so let's take you to it. Again, Derek and I worked on student perceptions of ability and opportunity across Connecticut's economic divide. So let's look at these correlations. Our question again was, do students of different districts view their own efficacy and ability to choose their course of study differently? And we find they did, and they didn't. So let's look at that. Here's a little slide showing kind of shortened versions of some of our questions. Derek mainly focused on self-efficacy and put these together about confidence in educational abilities, doing well in school, being successful, and succeeding. I looked more at the offerings of courses and electives and whether students felt they reflected their personal interests and their family and cultural backgrounds. And we did that survey and analyzed any differences or similarities, and here is what we found. In our Durg B school, Pine Glen, we found sort of an average self-efficacy score of around 80. And we just sort of totaled our numbers and found an average and took a percent of that, which is a pretty high percentage. B minus self-efficacy, feeling pretty good about what they're doing in school and their potential and reaching it. And for the second set of questions, we did the same thing, and that number came out to around 75 here at the bottom. So we took a look over at the city of Harbor Park and did the same thing. And out of those 89 students, the numbers averaged out to almost the same thing. Here we have 80. And 75. And when we click back to Pine Glen, you see the same thing. So we were kind of psyched to see that these students feel, number one, that they can do it, that they have a lot of potential and a lot of confidence in what they can accomplish, and that they felt that they had the same kinds of opportunities for choice and sort of agency in deciding what they wanted to do. This is not really what we expected. Back here at in Pine Glen, you'll see the median household income. That's why I did that. Is around $81,000, and here in Harbor Park, it's under 40. So again, you see the same numbers, and you see vastly different households. These are really, this one's from a nice real estate site from Pine Glen, and here's from the local paper in Harbor Park. But you see the students are putting out the same responses about themselves and their schools. So what happened? Why is that data so similar across these differing district reference groups? Our study doesn't fully look into the real answers. I mean, we might believe that we've come a long way. I think that our society definitely supports students in their own positive self-image in a lot of ways, and we do that for students of every kind of background. But we were curious about whether that was really the end of it, so we threw some numbers into our Excel and looked at self-efficacy and whether it correlated to self-directed learning. The original idea was maybe that students who had more opportunity to decide what they wanted to do might get a better sense of their own potential. And we found in the Durg B school, Pine Glen, that the numbers clustered up here, fairly high up here in the upper quadrant, and positive results, but that it didn't seem like one influenced the other to a great deal. And the R-squared value, which is a measure of how much these points, where we graphed one student's sort of self-directed learning value here at 60 against their self-efficacy value here around in the mid-50s somewhere. And all the points representing the sort of two halves of the student's responses. The R-squared value shows how much these points match the sort of line of best fit right here. And this is a pretty low value. It's 0.012, which means that they're kind of scattered. They're not really correlated to this line that we're finding here. And as part of the process, we flipped the x and y values just to see if that really made any kind of difference. Of course, the R-squared value stays the same, but the slope is still around 0.1. So over here in Harbor Park, there was something that looked to be a bit different. Even though you still kind of have a scattered set of numbers, the slope of this line is 0.4, which is about 4 times higher than in the other school, in the Derg B school, suggesting that there might be more of a correlation as there are more opportunities for self-directed learning, or a sense that there are. The sense of self-efficacy may increase. Further supporting this is the R-squared value is not 0.01 but 0.1, meaning that these are still fairly scattered numbers, but that they look like they may be more correlated to a line that's showing some sort of relationship might be there. We flip the axes again. Same R-squared value, a little bit less of a correlation. But again, the idea of flipping the axes was to, there's no evidence of a particular causality here. We don't know if maybe self-efficacy, as it increases, maybe students will take more opportunities to direct their own learning or be more aware of them, or vice versa. But it was interesting to look at whether the numbers changed much between SDL here on the x-axis being the independent variable and self-efficacy. But putting self-directed on the bottom there, we can compare the Derg B school to the Derg I, and you can see in the two graphs that there seems to be a little bit of difference. And again, going back, here we seem to have the same numbers, 80 and 80, 75 and 75, but something may be going on in the data here, showing that a different relationship is happening in one school as compared to the other. And so, our conclusions. Although the R-squared coefficient is low in Bridgeport data, there's enough of a difference between the results to encourage further study of a possible link between 1, a greater sense of control over course choices and availability of culturally relevant academic experiences, and 2, greater self-efficacy. This link appears to be of more significance in Harbor Park than it is in Pine Glen. And we think that further study in this area with a more refined and expanded survey and analysis instruments is indicated. And the sort of second part of our conclusions here in this part of our paper comes down to improving equity. And it may involve a different approach in schools, and that's sort of a complex issue. You know, is it right to do a different thing in one school system to seek to achieve the same results as is happening in another school system? But this indicates that a different approach may be needed. One conclusion might be that there is sufficient self-directed learning opportunities in the Derg B school in Pine Glen, and that's why the numbers are maybe more scattered, that you've kind of reached a saturation point, and they have there are no concerns or issues with opportunities to direct. And perhaps once the Derg I school is brought up to that level, then you'd see the same sort of scattered, unrelated points that just reflect the individual personalities of the students and not the systemic issues. And so what we're saying here in this slide is that if you implement more opportunities for self-directed learning, because there's no retrograde influence, in other words, there wasn't a downward slope in that Derg B school, it would seem that you might be able to pour more opportunities to make choices into both schools, and it would not have a negative impact on a Derg B school, but it would possibly have a positive impact on the Derg I. So everybody wins because you're doing the same thing everywhere, but it might be pulling up the experience of Derg B. So there we have it. That's sort of what the graphs tell us. It was interesting to explore that and kind of tease out some data from there. So thank you very much for listening.